Ed is ready, and everyone else is ready. I think we'll call this meeting to order. And Chris, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The sign-in sheets are going around, the sign-in sheet is going around, so I would ask that everyone who's here, please sign in. And I will open the floor for public comments. Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Representative Umberger, Chairman Sorensen, Commissioners, Representatives, I'm Maynard Thompson from Freedom. Most of you know me. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you briefly this morning about 4 things that I'd urge you to keep in mind in these and all your deliberations here and in Concord. And then I'd like to apply a few of those things to some of the specific budget items that you're considering today. The first thing that I hope you'll all keep in mind is that, as many of you have heard, New Hampshire is in a severe economic long-term decline, driven by our rapidly aging population. And every level of government, I think, has to consider this a looming crisis that will tear at our social fabric and put terrible pressures on our budgets, on our revenues, on our calls on public spending, and everything you do can affect that. And please, when you do keep those things in mind, remember that the weight of these things doesn't fall equally across the population. The young and the poor will be paying a particularly severe price. The only thing that I'm aware of that we can do to try and address this is to accelerate the productivity of New Hampshire's economy across all sectors. And by that I mean getting increased outputs per unit of input by everything that we can do, both government itself functioning at a higher level of productivity and government making sure that everything it does is focused on the need to increase productivity and not create impediments to economic development and growth. In each of the actions that you consider, I suggest that it's a mistake to start by focusing on cost. Particularly my Republican colleagues have a tendency to do that, but I think it's a long-term failure, because I think the imperative thing is to focus in the first instance on whether a given proposed action or item of expenditure is an appropriate action for government. And by appropriate action, when you ask whether something is appropriate for government, what you're really asking is it necessary to force people who would not undertake this voluntarily to do it nonetheless? And I think the answer to that has to require you to think about the purposes for which we have government and to ask yourselves, is this really such a compelling public need that the private sector cannot serve, that it's appropriate that we force people who would not do this voluntarily to do it nonetheless? We cannot afford to allow sentiment or tradition or emotion to drive our government spending. And I hope you'll keep that in mind as you go through the budget. Third, please don't upstream welfare. By upstreaming welfare, I mean please look at every policy and ask yourself, are we going to be taking money from people who don't have much of it in order to provide that money or a good or service to people who have more? And in most instances, that means you should be means testing or requiring the recipients of your grants to means test any time they're going to be involved in taking money from the taxpayers and redistributing it. Finally, please consider whether it is appropriate for government ever to enter into head-to-head competition with the private sector. When you do that, it says to everybody in your economic system, this is not a good place for private capital. It is a breach of faith with the taxpayers who are providing you with the money that you administer to use that money to compete with them. Applying that to specific budget items, applying these considerations to specific budget items. I urge you to eliminate the subsidy to the Cooperative Extension Program. Eliminate it entirely. There's no reason why the taxpayers of Carroll County should be forced to subsidize private golf courses, 4-H clubs, or jelly-making classes. None of these things are obviously essential public services. None of them are things that the private sector can't supply and won't supply more efficiently. We're simply taking money. When you do that, you're taking money from taxpayers, you're giving it to the Cooperative Extension Service that converts it into goods and services, which it provides to people, as I understand, without regard to need. You're funding those services for those people by taking money from people who wouldn't voluntarily give the money for those purposes. And you're saying, in effect, it's unthinkable that somebody should have to face the awesome choice between paying for his or her own jelly-making class or going through life without that knowledge. I think that's an inappropriate use of government, and it's an example of what I mean. If anyone disagrees with that assessment, then I would ask, and I think the voters would be very interested in knowing, what is your theory of government under which that, for example, is an appropriate action? How do you decide who deserves to receive money taken from somebody else? And what assurances can you offer that when you do that, you're not taking money from somebody who has little in order to give it to a rich, retired wannabe jelly maker? Second, I urge you to eliminate the county farm. I don't think it matters whether it makes money for the county or not. From what I've seen, I don't think you have the financial controls with which to make that determination, but that should be irrelevant. It's not an appropriate government function. There are no shortage of farms. Third, you should require adequate standardized accounting, including full costing of every proposal that comes to you commissioners or from the commissioners to you delegates. You should commission an outside audit to find out exactly what the costs and benefits are of the various programs in which you're involving taxpayer money. There should be no consideration of any use of the old nursing home that would involve direct competition with private landlords. A consultant should be called in to advise on the costs and benefits of selling the new nursing home. Anything that you can do that gets open-ended liabilities off the taxpayers' books should be carefully considered. Ann Aiton's here. She's one of the best public servants I've ever encountered in years of dealing with them at the state and federal level and years of being one myself. You run a wonderful department, but I fundamentally disagree with you on one thing. I think it's imperative that people be able to access computerized deed records. This will contribute immediately to the productivity of the people who have occasion to access those records on a regular basis. You can also charge more for it. They'll pay for the convenience. It will drop more to the bottom line of the county. And finally, I hope you'll all keep in mind that any expense and any regulation at any level of government may be just unnoticeable to those of us fortunate enough to have adequate resources. but it may be the straw that breaks the back of the young, struggling family, the young people who are deciding whether they can stay in New Hampshire or have to leave for better opportunities. You know, those of us who have some resources, some education, some organizational skills, are far better at wresting services from government that serves our interests and protects our interests against competition and enriches us than are the poor, the poorly educated, the people who lack organizational skills, the people who can't afford to lobby or to hire lobbyists. And those are the people who should be in the forefront of your considerations in everything you do all of the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, we will, and thank you for coming and expressing your thoughts.
Thank you.
The purpose of today's meeting is to see where we are in regards to the subcommittee work that has occurred. And what things are looking like as we're going through this annual ritual of trying to decide how much we're going to authorize the county to spend. So, I guess that I will, let me also mention that several people are not here today and notified me that they would not be here. And so Representative Chandler, Representative Cordelli, and Representative Schmidt, that I'm aware of, that were not able. They have other commitments today, and so we're not able to be here. So, if I could, Representative Crawford, would you mind starting with the, oh, you don't want to be first?
That's okay. I believe the sheriff has a copy of his revised budget. We've worked on this for 2 meetings, and our first meeting with the House Sheriff, thank you, was basically just for informational, because it really wasn't considered his budget, it was the previous sheriff's budget. So we went over that line by line with my committee, and some changes were made in basically what the original budget that you all received the first delegation meeting. So the sheriff is passing around his figures that I believe are in his handwriting at the end. There's a couple of changes from our meeting that we had Thursday on the 24th. Those have an asterisk next to it. And we could look at those. We'll go down it. Yes. Sure. Oh, we still have.
I think we're making a little progress here. But thank you, Sheriff. Everybody have a copy? Oh, we need one more. 2 more? I gave 2 to Ed.
I have 2 page 13s.
Should be 4 pages for 2 sheriff, 2 dispatch.
5? 13, 14, 15, and 16, I think.
Okay, I don't have 13 either.
There's a 13, and there's a 13.
Okay. You have 4 pages?
Thank you.
I don't know if you want me to go down line by line.
Please.
I'll do the best that I can.
Okay.
We, as a committee, certainly haven't had a chance to get together and discuss these final figures as a committee. It was just really an overview that we went over with the sheriff, and 2 of the commissioners were there on Thursday also to ask questions. You'll see on the administrative salary line, the new number that we have from the old budget is 154396. That includes the new deputy sheriff, chief deputy sheriff's salary of $40,000. That is a salary position, not an hourly position. So that's why that line is up.
If I may.
Yes.
Is that a new hire?
Yes.
It is a new hire as far as administrative. Help me with the administrative work, and the lieutenant will be more in working with the frontline deputy.
Any questions? Any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she asked if there was a question. And I do have a question.
I'm going to let her, I'm going to let her take
Okay.
care of.
All right. thank you.
Okay.
And I'm sorry to, and thank you for allowing me to ask this question, Representative Crawford. And I'm sorry to jump ahead, but it makes a difference in the tenor of the questioning, is that in the Sheriff's Department total on
Yes.
page 14,
Yes.
that $187,000 figure can't be correct. So I was just wondering if we might be able to find out what the corrected figure is before we get there.
Is it additional to the,
Why do you, I guess I'd have to ask the question, why do you think it's not correct?
Well, because the commissioner's budget was $1,864,000, so
Right.
I don't think that we cut $1.7 million from the budget.
You wish we did, right?
So I mean, it could just be a comma or a missing
Yeah,
digit.
It should be one
I have-
million eight hundred seventy-eight thousand 590.
Should be what?
1878590.
Thank you.
1,878.
Because the missing eight in there.
So it's one, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it's 1,876.
Thank you for seeing that.
Nope,
I just got this last night, so I.
no problem, it's just,
Yeah.
just kind of want to know what the overall change is.
Okay.
590.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
She's
Yes.
gonna,
Go ahead.
she's gonna, I don't need to intervene.
Okay. The chair just asked if this was a new position. No, it was a new hire. Is it a new position, and is there, are we eliminating a position somewhere else?
No, it is a new position. There is an opening for a level sheriff that hasn't been filled, that they want to fill. They won't really do anything about that until this budget is completed. The deputy chief is a new position. I think in the past there have been deputy chiefs, but not in the last couple of administrations. Is that correct to say, Sheriff?
Yes, this would be the third deputy chief in my tenure at the sheriff's office. There basically has always been at least two administrators besides the sheriff. When I was there was a captain and two lieutenants. And then there has been a chief deputy and lieutenants in the past also. There's typically been 3 administrative ranks throughout the last 20 years or plus.
Thank you.
If I might,
Yes.
is this, no, never mind. I saw the answer, excuse me.
That's okay. So administrative salaries, 154,396. Grant salary, basically, that $10,000 has gone down. I'm trying to remember, Sheriff, why that figure is from 40 to 10. I don't have it in my notes.
That was because the AG's task force, drug task force
That's
is no
right,
longer.
thank you. We no longer are sending an officer down to the AG's office for the drug task force. That's a rotating thing that they take from departments, do they not?
Yes, we were asked several years ago when that was done. The drug task force has been cut throughout the state, so we're no longer providing that service.
And special details, I believe we received revenues from that, do we not, from the town of Albany for patrolling their town? That $23,520, so that's offset with revenue.
Of that is $20,000 from the town of Albany for special patrols.
Yes. And there's any questions, please just jump in. I'd appreciate that. Salary for personal days. It's not a huge change. Actually went down a little bit from the commissioners.
Representative Carroll?
Yes.
Thank you. The line before, the Albany grant, is there
Yes.
any reason that that Albany can't pay for that entire amount? Why is there a difference between the 20,000 and the additional 3,500?
I'm not sure.
Difference would be that 20,000 of that is the town of Albany, and that is their total cost. The 3,520 is made up of outside details that we may provide, to include, one of them is a highway safety detail that we have submitted to the state in the last several years, we'll do again.
That highway safety is a grant, is it not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Overtime, the sheriff has tried to keep that at $42,000. He's going to try to use more of his part-time people instead of having his officers do overtime details. Salary and secretary, basically that stayed the same. Salaries for the deputies, that actually went down a little bit. Special duties. Yes, Chris.
Thank you for taking my question. I just want to interject that when your comments are, when you're stating that the amount is down, it's only going down from what the commissioner's original budget was. It's not
Right.
going down from last year's budget. It's actually quite a hefty increase, frankly, from that line you just mentioned. Went up
I know, I
almost
understand that, and
12%.
What's difficult, I've done a lot of budgets, and sometimes what's difficult for me is I always like to see the actuals from the year before, and I understand it's tough to do that, and we don't have those right at this point in time. You can see that the actuals basically are from November 30th. So when I make that kind of comment, I'm looking at the commissioner's recommendations and a little bit from the adopted budget from 2012. But I think the real story would be, and probably come back to you when we have the actuals, and I believe that will be in February, so that we'll know exactly what was spent in those line items. And I think it's just easier to determine, for myself anyways, what's gone up and what's gone down. Go ahead.
I follow what you're saying, but the point I'm trying to bring out is that your comments are only related to what the commissioner's budget is for 2013, and we're not looking at the increases from last year's budget to this year's budget when you make that comment.
Okay.
You stated that it went down slightly, but in actuality, it went from 500,000 to 563,000, which is an increase of
I see what you're saying.
$63,000, which is
Okay.
over 12%. So that's a rather significant increase that we're characterizing as a decrease.
Gotcha. I'll try to be more careful with my
Thank
wording.
you.
Special, is that where I left off? Or the sheriff's salary. I'm assuming that from 2012, that has to do with retirement and
On the sheriff's salary?
on your sheriff's
No,
salary.
that was the delegation.
That's the
Chooses
delegation,
that at
okay.
the last delegation.
Good. And there shouldn't be a problem there. And Social Security, I think those are uncontrolled benefits that we really don't have a lot of say over. Bailiffs, I know this is going to be some questions on bailiffs. The bailiffs receive now $85 a day. The state pays $80 of that. I believe that the sheriffs would like to see $90. The bailiffs would. I know that Commissioner Babson had concerns about that, and commented that, either they get overtime or they get the per diem. And I know that the chairman had concern about the $80 or the $85, and I'm sure you all might have questions about the extra $5 that the county pays the bailiffs.
My question is, I thought that we were paying 75, okay, and that we originally, I think the state was paying 60, or maybe it was 65, okay? And we increased it to 75. Now the state is paying 80, and we want to increase it to 85. This makes me a little squirrely, in that I think that that's a decision that we as a delegation will need to have a vote on, as to whether or not we want to go beyond the state limit. I mean, we had done it because we were under, we were significantly under. And so I would like to, not today, but that will be one of the things that I think that we need to have a vote on. It's not that I am, opposed or anything like that, but I just feel that that is not a decision that the sheriff can make on his own, that is a decision that we as a delegation need to make. And I don't believe necessarily that we are having trouble getting bailiffs to work. Or if we are, I haven't heard about it.
The revenue that we receive from the state, the difference between the revenue that we receive from the state and what the county is paying, I think that figure we should have. I think that's an important figure that we should have, because we can't make a determination on what the county is spending and what we're offsetting from the state. And I think at one point, the commissioners did a survey of what other counties were paying their bailiffs. And I know in the northern and the southern part of the state, they get a lot more than they do in the northern part of the state. So maybe I could come back with some figures to help make
That'll be fine.
decision. Medical insurance. Oh, certainly.
Yeah, just for the history, I think you were here at the time. The state was paying $65 a day, and we had a bill before the legislature to raise it to either 75 or 80, and we generously said we will pay more in the interim until that bill passed. The bill passed, and the former sheriff came in and said, well, the way the minutes are written, that you continue to pay the extra money.
$10.
That really wasn't the way it happened here that day.
Well, I just think that we need to, we'll have a vote on that
Sure.
at our next meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Madam Chairman?
Yes. Oh, wrong one.
I'm wondering if you allow public questions on specific budget lines, or do we just save a long list for the end?
Save a long list for the end, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you.
Medical insurance, that is up, I believe, for the, I asked the question, and it's the new deputy that would be hired. They have to put in for a family plan, because you don't know, when a new deputy is hired, if they'll have a family, if it would just be for himself, or just for he and his wife. That is the difference in those figures. Retirement, I believe retirement is what it is. The state has put the burden back onto the municipalities and the counties for picking up more of the retirement expense. Workman's comp, we don't really have, I don't believe, a lot of control over that either. On unemployment tax, the same. Dental insurance, I'm not quite sure. I didn't ask the question to the sheriff. I said, nobody takes dental insurance? I don't. It's $384, Sheriff. I think we talked about that.
We do take it, it's not much of a fee actually for dental insurance per year. And there's one dispatcher you'll see that only takes dental insurance, doesn't take medical insurance.
Oh, I see.
It's not a very high cost.
Thank you. Education and conferences, that has stayed at $6,000. Medicare, uncontrolled expense, U.S. Forestry salary.
Excuse me.
Oh, yes,
Oh, Medicare, yes,
Yes.
Medicare is paid by everybody,
okay,
not Social Security, but Medicare.
okay. And U.S. Forestry salaries, that's a contract grant, I believe, a contracted grant with the Forestry Service for.
And they're going to pay us next year 12/1 as opposed to 11/5?
Yes, we just did get that contract and that's the amount.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
On that forestry salaries, what exactly are we paying them for?
That's for a detail rate, and that's for patrolling the Tangamingus Highway and the 302 out in Harts, the forestry areas, the campsites. It's for specialized patrols in that area
Okay.
during the summertime.
Thank you.
Other fee and services, $5,000. I don't have a note on that. It's down $2,500. Office supplies have stayed the same. Dues and licensing is about the same. It's up maybe $200 from the adopted budget. K-9 expenses, I know someone may have a question about K-9. I don't believe they've used the K-9 in the past. They would like to use the K-9 in the future from the next year on. K-9 does exist. The K-9 is, I think, 9 years old.
Yeah.
They have all the equipment, the cruisers equipped, because all cruisers have to be, if you're carrying a K-9, have to be equipped with special equipment. They already have that equipment. We asked many questions about what the expense would be to keep the dog on. Sheriff reassured us that that would be the expense, the $1,518. That would be a decision, I guess. Our committee really hasn't had a long discussion about it, but we did talk about veterinary bills and food and that kind of thing to see. If anyone had any questions about the K-9. Okay. Deputy expenses, $3,000, it's down $2,000 from 2012. Second page on 14, investigative supplies. Meals, cut that in half. And uniforms, that's part of the collective bargaining agreement with the deputies. I believe they receive $510 a year. And the $11,000 includes the sheriff and the deputy sheriff per the commissioner's decision. Any questions about that? Okay. Computer expense, it's down $5,000 from the $12,200. Advertising, also down. Telephone is $11,900. That's down from the budget. That really includes the cell phones for the sheriff and the deputies. Radio communication stayed the same. Vehicle lease purchase, that would be 3 cruisers, I believe, Sheriff? Purchase of
Yes,
3 cruisers and gas.
Yes, that
Yeah.
includes gasoline.
And the expenses are up maybe $200 for the vehicles on the next line. What's that?
The expenses include
Yes.
gas, I'm sorry.
The expense is the gas, not the lease, not the purchase. I put it in the wrong line, thank you. And we talked in length about where they get, where they're getting their gasoline from, some from state, and sometimes from Irving, and really depends on who's the cheapest. They have the option to do both. Photocopy,
Can you back up?
yes, I certainly can.
I thought you said there was $2,000 increase on the previous one, vehicle expense from what the commissioners were asking?
No, I don't think I said that. I think I said $200.
But you went from 97 to 83.
I was looking, I know I said from the adopted budget.
Okay.
And copiers, the copying expense has gone down $400. The camera darkroom, that's $100, that's actually for film, if they have to use film, and photo paper. Extraditions are down to $500. Insurance, I have to look at my notes. 50,000. Sheriff, is that?
That's for the extraditions, is that what you want?
No, insurance. The budget was 36,800, and now it's 50,000. What was the?
Yeah, the liability insurances and the auto insurance for the vehicles.
Okay. I'm assuming with the newer ones it goes up. And your firearms training has pretty much stayed the same. With new equipment, for the mobile radios, they will be purchasing new mobile radios. And information technology is your IT contract, which stayed the same. Any questions?
I guess this is more of a statement. The sheriff's budget, as approved by the commissioners, was up 5.5%. And now we're looking at an additional increase. And my comment to that is, and that's up, from the 1.7 the year before. And so I am personally not particularly happy as we're looking at the sheriff's budget, because this will drive us up, another several thousand.
14,000.
So I would, number one, I wasn't happy with the commissioner's budget, and now I'm even less happy. But I certainly cannot accept the fact that the sheriff is exceeding what the commissioners recommended, which was already significant. Now, I understand we had an election, we had changes, we had all kinds of things going on. We have changes here. And, but from my point of view, we need to stay within the commissioner's budget, or the commissioners need to come back and tell us at our next meeting where else within the budget they're going to cut the money to support the sheriff's increase. And so, I don't care how you do it, but we're, from my position, I cannot live with this. And so if the commissioners want to do that, they can do that and bring it to the next meeting. but we can't be exceeding a 5.5% increase when in fact I'm not even sure we can accept a 5.5% increase in the sheriff's budget. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and as I said, it was more of a statement than anything. So we need to have both the sheriff and the subcommittee and the commissioners take a look at it and figure out what's going to happen on that. Yes?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very,
Yes, it was.
very nice.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I know it can be tough, especially in your first term and being your first exposure to the Sheriff's Department. I previously have been the chairman of the Sheriff Dispatch Subcommittee, and it can be complicated, to say the least, because there's different insurances, and there's different retirements, and all kinds of different things. But I do have a few questions that hopefully you or the sheriff may amplify on. And I guess my first question is regarding the retirement expense. That particular line has gone up, $40,000, and I'm wondering how. I'd like a little breakdown. I know that there's, been some additional money that the state, or at least my understanding is the state may not be contributing quite as much, but it just seems to me like that amount of money is far beyond any decreases that I recall when I was down in Concord last session.
But most of these all the sheriffs are in retirement 2, not retirement 1. So retirement 2's contributions are much higher. From what I know of experience being in that, my husband being in that field. So the contributions are certainly not the same as would be for your dispatchers or for secretaries or things like that. So with the state passing those fees, extended fees on to the municipalities, everybody's retirement line, whether it be teachers or secretaries or whoever is paying into the retirement system is going to go. I mean, I didn't break it down to.
Okay.
If I might.
Sure. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
The retirement system, not the state, the retirement system, is $3 billion out of whack as to where they need to be for any number of reasons. And has to make up this $3 billion so that the next group of people that are retiring we're going to have a retirement system for them. Over the last, who knows how many years, the employers have not been tasked with providing sufficient money to cover the $3 billion debt. And so what is going on is approximately a 25-year program to get us back only to 80% funding of the retirement system. So I think they said by 2039, based on actuarial and all this other kind of stuff, that when they computed the dollars that were necessary to support the retirement system that we currently have, that because the employers had been underpaying over time, that the employer rates jumped to basically make up for that $3 billion loss. So it's the retirement system, it's the length of time that people are living, and it's the benefits that are being paid that are causing the employer rates the employer rates to jump. Also, the employee rates went up 2%, I think, for maybe the police and the fire were a little bit more than 2%, but it was roughly 2% increase on the employees as well. And so it's, and that, by the way, was a state action, okay? What's happening on the employer side is a retirement system action to make sure that when people are 95 that are retiring today, that there is money there to pay them. When, you know, and that's kind of where it is. And the reason that the employer rates went up is because the employers had been underfunding, along with the fact that the retirement system has not been returning, you know, it's not been earning as much money. If all of a sudden the stock market starts earning lots and lots of money, then employer rates would go down. So if you can fix that, okay?
If you're looking at me to
Yeah,
fix that.
yeah. If you can fix that, Representative Crawford,
Yeah, right.
we will all be happy. But as it stands right now, that's the reason why the employer rates have jumped, because we're underfunded by $3 billion. Or you can write a check, either way.
If I might continue.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry, but I wanted to just try to clear
Thank you
that
very
up.
much, and I appreciate, because you help amplify what I guess I was trying to discuss, is that whatever we did down in Concord did not increase the retirement line even close to that amount of money. So the description of this $40,000 of being that cannot be, it's only somewhat accurate. So I'd like to know a better breakdown as to why, you know, we've seen this big jump in the retirements.
I'll give it to the sheriff.
It did solely do that. There was no hire here that created any difference for that. The vacancy that is slotted actually provided a decrease because that wage will be less than the deputy that left. So there is no wage here that increased that at all, other than what the state did to the counties and the towns.
The retirement system did. Okay, not the state, the retirement system.
Push the cost of the town.
So I'd like to see a breakdown of that. I'd like to, is what I'd like to see is how that computes out the difference from last year's computations to this year's computations. So we can see the actual effect. Because that's an increase of
It's a lot of money.
$40,000 over $134,000. You know, it's nearly a 50%, well, no, not a 50%, but 25% increase, so. Can't recall us,
It's 25 point something, right? This is the employer contribution, so it's up from.
okay, but
It's up.
I think it's,
That's fine.
I think it's a good note.
Yep.
And also, we had I'm also a little puzzled by the amount of total salary increases from the previous year's budget, because the grant salary line, that number 2 line, 440, that's, you know, that designates a $30,000 decrease in salary, but that is offset by revenues, which we unfortunately did not receive, but from our prior packets, you'll also see that the sheriff's incomes have been decreased by $28,000, or that corresponding amount of $40,000 to $10,000. So when you look at all of the increases in salary, you know, it's significant. You know, we've gone up $50,000 from administrative salaries, we've gone up $63,000 in deputy salaries, there's a significant change in the amount of salaries. The only reductions are from special details, which are offset by revenues.
Right.
And should be correspondingly offset by revenues. So there's been a rather large increase in the amount of money we're spending for deputy salaries that doesn't necessarily flow directly to this bottom line that I have concerns over. And the number of hours that we have that we're spending for salaries over last year, I think is something that, I'd like to see a breakdown of, because it does seem to be more than just one person.
I did ask the sheriff the question about that vacancy that they have not filled. And I did ask him the question, do we need to fill it? And he assured me that we did because of coverage and I asked how long it had been vacant, and he said since November, I believe, right, Sheriff, something like that.
Yes, November. The prior sheriff did try to fill it, that was unsuccessful. I will not have that difficulty to fill it with a certified officer as far as, so that will save the county any money for training and getting them right on the road. Also, the prior sheriff did overspend part-time salary, I believe it was, over $20,000. So just note that, please.
We no longer have a prosecutor. They took that out. The sheriffs themselves are prosecuting their cases in court. I believe that was a $15,000, $15,000 or $14,000, $15,000 saving.
What line would that be on?
I believe that was in,
Yeah, the prior sheriff did not break that out. He used salaries from deputies, overtime, and part-timers to provide that service. You would have seen that in a prosecutor line this year, but I chose to eliminate that altogether.
I just want to comment with all due respect that last year's budget of $500,000 included this unfilled position. So the fact that we're filling the position should not make any difference in the amount of the budget.
right.
Is what?
I
So
understand.
that answer is very good, and I understand that, but that would only, really affect the actual numbers that we spent, not the budget to budget.
I only asked the question because I thought if they really, truly didn't need to fill it, that would take off that, whatever the salary would be for, an experienced deputy would come off that $500,000. I know it's still there.
Madam Chairman, how many employees do we have that are with the retirement system?
In the sheriff's department?
Yes, you went over with a $40,000 increase or whatever it was. How many employees does that represent?
Those would be just the deputies, not the dispatchers?
Yes.
Yes.
How many deputies do we
All
have?
but Chief Deputy Young and myself are in the retirement system, so the 10.
Thank you.
Okay,
One more question?
yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If we're going to ask for a recommended budget set at some lower figure, could we also ask for an explanation along with that of what services we're going to cut?
Yes.
Yes, Madam Chairman, just a general couple of questions which applies overall. One of them I think I've asked about before. But if it were at all possible, and I would think it should be, can't we just get for additional use, a simple report that says, by line item, that says income and expenditures? Now you gotta go back to the income sheet, balance it out and so forth. It would make it an awful lot easier comparison if we just put the totals on each of those lines with income on one side and expenditures on the others, and you could see the difference real quick as to what was happening on some of these things. I'd really like to see a report like that.
Is that possible, Kathy?
I could work on something like that. I'd have to like create it.
And
And only, there's only, like the sheriff's department only has so many lines of income. So like you're saying like detail, income, whatever it is, expenses, whatever it is. All lines don't have an income to correspond with it.
I'd like to take,
Or the bailiffs,
Yeah.
so the ones that have
the
something.
ones that have an income, I'd like to see the line item and the income and the expenditure,
Yeah,
so I
sure,
could
I can
so I
do
could
that,
compare.
yeah.
You can do it now, I mean, you can switch back and forth here, but it'd be a
Right.
heck of a lot easier to follow this thing if we could do it.
Because there's
that way.
only certain departments that have income to us.
Yeah, just those always. And the second comment that I've got, and this has always bothered me, and maybe we can't do anything about it, but we start now reviewing the budget, and we're using November's figures. And what's going to happen is we get the late figures, and we'll go over this whole thing again, which doesn't really make any sense to me. And I don't know when all the expenditures have to be in, but wouldn't it make more sense? I mean, we have other things we've got to do other than the budget, but wouldn't it make more sense to do those first and then let the subcommittees keep working, but not have the full delegation look at the whole budget until we had the final figures?
Let me just say that I think we need an update on where we are and what's going on, so that as you continue your work on your subcommittees, that you know sort of what the questions are and how we're going to get to something that is reasonable for the taxpayers of Carroll County.
Okay, it just bothered me that in the past, we'd look at the budget, the subcommittee would look at the budget, the subcommittee would make a great presentation, we get down to the end, we'd ignore the subcommittee and we'd go through the whole thing line by line again.
We are not.
To me, that doesn't make any sense at all.
We're definitely not ignoring the subcommittees this year,
Right.
under any circumstances. What you bring to us is what the subcommittee brings is what we will deliberate on and make our recommendations from. I mean, obviously, based on what the commissioners' recommendations were and where we stand in relationship to that. Okay. Representative Crawford, I see that no changes were made at this point to the dispatch, so I see no need for us to do anything with that.
I just have one
Sure.
comment, if I may, Madam Chair. I would respectfully like to request that this delegation form a subcommittee, as Commissioner Sorsen asked at the last meeting, to look at the request from the towns of Wolfboro, Moultonboro, and Conway. I'm just asking that a subcommittee look and listen to what they have to say, seeing as they pay 50% plus of the county budget. All they're asking for is that a subcommittee be formed to just hear what they have to say. And I would respectfully ask this delegation to do that, if they would.
Is that a motion?
Okay, it's a motion.
I'll second.
I don't have a problem with doing that, but I'm not sure that our sheriff's subcommittee couldn't carry out that particular responsibility without appointing someone else, unless there is someone else that would like to sit in on the conversation that will occur between the Wolfboro, Conway, and Moultonboro. So if there is somebody, then if that's agreeable, I mean, I'm not. You know.
I just don't know if I don't know how the delegation feels, if it's appropriate for me to be sitting, since I live in the town of Moultonboro. I mean,
We know
We
that.
all sit in.
We all sit in different places, so,
I'm just throwing it out.
yeah, yes.
Thank you for recognizing, Madam Chair, and I appreciate your comments. However, the towns have, have sent a couple letters to the commissioners, and I don't disagree with you that that subcommittee couldn't handle that task, but I believe the importance of the motion is that we, as a delegation, have specifically tasked that subcommittee to do that, perhaps report to us by a specific date, say like, as I might add a friendly amendment to give us a report, say by March, well, we have to meet in April, right? So by our April meeting, we have to meet, I believe, in April or May. Say, before May 30th. We'll certainly meet after the budget and before May 30th, I would imagine. So that that subcommittee could convene, make a report, and issue us their findings.
So you want to add with a report to the full delegation by May 30th?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
Are there any other comments, any thoughts?
What towns are represented on that committee?
Moulton Borough,
Bartlett.
if the subcommittee or
Yeah, on the subcommittee.
this subcommittee that I have, Moulton Borough, Tufton Borough, Conway, and Bartlett.
Does that represent a fair representation, looking at it from the towns that are asking and the towns that are not asking?
Yeah, that's why I asked if anybody else wanted to serve on that committee. But let's vote first on whether or not we think this is a good idea, okay? And then we'll describe who the subcommittee members are.
Just a point of order, are we voting on the amendment now? Was an amendment offered?
Yeah, we can vote on the amendment.
Okay, thanks.
All right. All those in favor of the amendment to have the report provided to the delegation prior to 30 May, please raise your hand. Or I guess we should do, yeah, we can do it this way, since it appears that everybody's in favor of that. Okay, now let's vote on the entire amendment, or entire thing, which is to set up a subcommittee for the, look at the town's comments from Moulton Borough, Wolfboro, and Conway, and the delegation, and report to the delegation by the 30th. I realize that's not exactly how it says, but, okay, could I have a show of hands on that? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in favor? One opposed? One opposed? Okay. So when we go into convention, we'll ratify that. But now I guess the question is, do we want, does anyone else want to serve on the subcommittee with the 4 people that are currently on there, on this committee?
Madam Chairman, it would appear all but one would like to appear on, or be on that subcommittee.
Well, I'm waiting for all of them to volunteer.
Okay.
Okay? I'm not hearing anybody's jump for joy or shout out.
So
or
would you just
Preferably
go
someone
over
not
for
from
me?
Moulton Borough,
Who's on the
Tufton Borough.
committee? Yeah. Who's on the?
The sheriff's dispatch committee right now is Representative Wright, myself, Representative White, and Representative Chandler.
Okay, and so, I've forgotten already, are half of the people on the committee from towns that this directly affects? Okay.
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman. Just the one comment I would add is that Mr. Chandler is quite busy and may not be able to attend. You may want to put somebody else in there to balance it out, I don't know.
Well, I see this, that
I can't volunteer, I'm sorry, I'm from Wolfboro.
Well, you, oh, right.
I'm from Wolfboro,
Right.
so.
I would do it, but my problem is between what I'm doing with the selectmen and everything else, I can't even find time to make my own doctor's appointment. So, you know, if it wasn't for that, I'd love to do it, but I just don't feel that I'd be a good member to do that.
yes.
I will volunteer to do it just because I believe it should have a fair hearing, and if it will help, I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The one other task that you need to be sure that can occur is whether it is legal to have different towns pay different rates. Okay. That is one of the stumbling blocks. Yes, Representative Butler.
And I recall that Representative Chandler's comment when this came up initially was that if we start splitting out what certain towns pay for certain services that the county provides, we're going to have a real challenge.
Mm-hmm. And that's all part of.
I think that is certainly questions that will be asked, and that the administrators from each of those towns don't expect an answer right away. All they want to do is have a committee listen to them. It's,
Okay. So, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. May I ask a question of the subcommittee on dispatch?
Sure.
If I could. There was discussion, mostly by myself in past years, on uniform expenses with dispatch. Was that discussed? I've
Yes, it
always had
was.
an issue with people behind closed doors having to wear uniforms.
Yes, it was. It was discussed on Thursday, and I believe the sheriff, I believe the sheriff said it's part of their bargaining, or it was part of a bargaining issue when they bargained for the contract. But with that said, the sheriff is going to try to eliminate any uniforms being worn by the dispatchers. And basically what the uniform is I believe just a polo shirt with an insignia on it, which sometimes they wear and sometimes they don't. And so he is not going to require that.
Thank you, and thank the sheriff.
All right. Moving on to the commissioner, the treasurer, the special fees, human resources, I don't know, whoever else we have, okay? This is that,
The Everything Else Committee?
yeah, the Everything Else Committee. And based on the Everything Else Committee, the 99% of the items that are in here are fixed charges and are not something that we can do a lot with. However, because we felt that we should contribute something to the taxpayers of the county. If you will go to page 19, which is the convention, Carroll County Convention, we have recommended, if I can find it, that that's actually on page 20, that we reduce the convention expenses from $4,000 to $3,000, and that's based on the fact that, if you look at our actual dollars from the previous years, we have not exceeded the $3,000, so we managed to reduce that. And the other meeting expense, we reduced by $350. So that was basically what our contribution was. We still have some discussions to continue on the IT contract and how that goes. And Kathy does have copies of the IT contract if anyone else in the delegation is interested in looking at that. The capital expenditures, we really did not make a decision on the impound yard. I asked the farm to look at the wood splitter and the jail to look at the camera upgrades, because I felt that that was more appropriate. I should say the committee felt that it was more appropriate for those two subcommittees to be, to look at that particular area. So, other than that, I don't, and I didn't bring my notes with me. Other than that, I don't remember any big deal. Yes.
I think the committee questioned why we are paying taxes to the town of Ossipee.
Oh, yes, yes. Did you find out a reason for that?
No.
Oh.
I think it's a good idea.
Not paying enough.
Well, we're paying roughly $7,000.
Yep. Kathy?
I just had a question. I've been getting emails that delegation about meeting fees that was set by the legislature might be going up. I don't know if you have.
What?
The $25 meeting fee. There's been some, I don't know if that's anything I need to concern with this or not.
There's a bill in, and it won't be effective till next session.
Okay.
So,
That's not mandatory though, is it? Doesn't it give the counties the option to do it or not?
I don't know. Did you sponsor that?
I'm on that committee. I only sponsored the part about the chairman getting the money. But it's not mandatory. It allows it to be $50.
Okay.
And it has not been brought to the committee yet.
It's got ways
Well,
to
let's see.
And
It's
it's certainly
got-
ways to be enacted.
Yeah. Anyhow. Yes.
Can I, so this jail, is this 40,000 for the cameras? And the administration, what's the 30,000 for?
That-
Administrative building.
Impound.
Oh, that was the impound yard that we haven't made, yeah. Oh, sorry. We have,
Thank
What
you.
was that, Carol?
Thank you for that response.
we have not taken an official vote out of the subcommittee on the impound yard.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
thank you, yeah, that was one of my favorite things that hasn't happened. So, Kathy, I assume that you will get us something on the taxes in the town of Ossipee. And also, we'll set up another meeting shortly. Yes.
Madam Chairman, I went over this a couple of years ago. I believe the taxes to the town of Ossipee, it's not on the buildings, it's on land in current use and the land that isn't in current use.
I don't know. I don't have a clue.
There are
Okay.
some buildings.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Oh, did you have a question?
I did have a question. If
Okay.
you could just review what the, everything else categories were, do you recall it? I didn't know if you highlighted them all, I was just trying to keep
Yes,
track.
I did.
Because regional appropriations, I think, is what, okay. So if you could just highlight the
Yep.
everything else committee that you were handling?
Yep. Commissioner, treasurer.
Oh, thank you so
Oh,
much.
Thank you. Special fees and services. Administrative building, human resources, human services, long-term debt, capital reserves, county convention, and capital expenditures.
Thank you very much. a great sheet of paper, I wish I had.
Yeah, well, I didn't bring mine either, so don't feel bad. Okay. Yes, Mark, would you like to be next?
Certainly.
I'm sorry, Representative.
Just as a side note, do you have any administrators here, though, that are in waiting? Or do you have people that are on your committee that are out there
If you do,
waiting?
I will,
Because I do, yes.
Okay.
So if it might be possible for me to go next,
Sure.
they could go on to what they need to do.
I do also, I have.
Oh, you do? Then go ahead. If you do, then great. I just want to make sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can see rank has its privileges. The whatever committee seems like that was rather tame. I had the pleasure of being the subcommittee for head of the attorney, victim witness, medical referee, registry of deeds, cooperative extension, regional appropriations, and the farm. Our meeting lasted 4.5 hours. And I would like to run through a summary, if I could, where we came in with an agreement. I was joined on the 7th with Representative Schmidt, Representative Ticehurst, and Representative Bucco had other duties that involved him to be in Concord. First meeting was with RSVP. Betty Jessman is the director. Explained her program, benefits and what we are receiving for those monies. It's a level appropriation from what her ask was from last year, and the committee was in favor of the recommendation. Next was the Carroll County Conservation District, presented by Joan Richardson. County has funded this program since 1971. Joan explained her program and services. The Carroll County Conservation District request is the same as last year. The subcommittee at the end did not reach a recommendation and is going to ask for further recommendations going forward before we come to a conclusion. There were some questions by the subcommittee as to whether the services in their entirety are still in need for the county to be supporting. We weren't looking to cut this, take this service away from our appropriation, but there might be some massaging of those funds. Carroll County Transportation request came from Jack Rose, who's director, I believe, of that organization, also selectman from Albany. He has a new request this year. There was a request 2 or 3 years previous that was approved for $1,000 that was not collected funds that year. There was a request last year that was not supported by the delegation. The new request this year is for $2,000 to support the demand ride service, or what's commonly referred to as the dial-a-ride service. They have 2 services that they provide. Dial-a-ride, I need a ride to get me to an appointment, I need a ride to get me to the doctor and so forth. And they have a fixed route program that starts in West Ossipee, goes to Wolfboro, goes to Laconia, and goes to Conway on a fixed schedule. Their request for the $2,000 is entirely for the dial-a-ride and not for the regular scheduled service. The regular scheduled service is the service that they look for support donations from the town. So this is a separate request for $2,000. The subcommittee at the end decided to support a request for $1,000 and not the $2,000. And that money must be spent for the dial-a-ride service. Yes. Representative.
Thank you, Representative McConkey. Does that dial-a-ride apply to towns which normally don't have the bus service, or is it just within the towns that do have the bus service?
It has, it will vary off the normal route, and with enough notification can, I believe, will bleed a little into some of those towns that don't have the fixed route.
Thank you.
That's true.
We've moved on to cooperative extension service. Budget was presented by Ann Hamilton, County Administrative Officer, I believe is her title. Budget request overall is down $5,000 from last year's request. There have been some administrative changes in that bookkeeping is now going to be centralized in Durham. I think that's where all money rests anyways. And there's a new fee structure for staff. They have come up with a new system to determine counties' appropriation for program people. And it's a more costly formula for our county than it has been in the past. In addition to that, the cooperative extension, the university has decided to downshift the cost for a higher proportion for the 4-H coordinator to Carroll County. And Carroll County will now be paying 75% of that person's salary going forward. The subcommittee had many questions for the cooperative extension. Ms. Hamilton's been kind enough to send response back to the committee. We have not reached a decision at this point in time, and the information provided, I think, sparks some more conversation. So we don't have a recommendation at this time for the cooperative extension. Registry of Deeds, budget presented by Registrar Anton, who is here. The best news is her income exceeded projections for this year by in the neighborhood of $130,000. Recordings in November and December were more robust than normal. Despite this increase, the registrar has used her first 10 months of revenue to project her income going into 2013, which is conservative and which is the method that's been used for many, many years with that. And a few years we're surprised with income, but for the most part it's usually pretty close. There is an increase in equipment, safety-related items that they're hoping to purchase. That increase shows on our budget, but it's not funded by the taxpayers. That monies comes from a surcharge when people record documents, and it accumulates a fund, and once the fund gets above a certain level threshold, that fee is no longer collected. But these safety improvements, which involve cameras at the counters and a secure door that leads you into where the staff resides during the day, would be added. Like I said, there's safety issues. To the customer coming forward to record documents or to speak at the counter, they'll see no other changes. We're not anticipating glass-proof walls or anything at that point. There's safety issues. It does involve an increase, but it will not be reflected in our budget for funds to be raised. The commissioners are in agreement with the request, and the subcommittee is also in agreement with the registrar's request as presented. County attorney. I would like to say that one of my favorite things about having the Registry of Deeds, which I've had a number of years, is the department runs very well. And it's also one of our few cash cows that this county has. County attorney, Robin Gordon, was present. I believe the attorney is here present. She has request is $12,500 than what was presented to the commissioners. The budget was prepared by the past county attorney, and there were increases in salary, I believe, to assistants and other professionals there that she does not feel needs to be paid, and that reflects a $12,500 decrease. Very proud of our attorney for coming forward with a decrease. There was a further conversation about private use of smartphones that her attorneys are using and what their reimbursement rate is for that. And the attorney is working on, we couldn't settle on that because where we are at this point in time, so the attorney is going to work on that, and I believe it was also with victim witness to come to what a more honest rate would be that we're reimbursing for that. So because of that, we weren't able to finalize the attorney's budget at this time. Child advocacy was next, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Elizabeth Kelly, who's the executive director, presented the budget. Her request is up $10,000, due in fact to a grant a couple years ago. I think it was a couple years ago. We had expanded facilities for child advocacy from Wolfboro to include Conway. And in doing that, we had received a grant to aid us in that happening and took care of quite a bit of the expense. Unbeknownst to the Child Advocacy Center, and they were under the impression they'd have a continuing grant coming forward, as they do, which helps greatly support the Wolfboro operation. They came to find out that that grant is not there, and that they have this shortfall of $10,000. They're asking the county to reimburse them for that, to pick up that cost. We had quite a conversation on that. More information was requested. The request with the addition is supported by Attorney Gordon, but the subcommittee has not reached a conclusion at this time. Victim witness, Director Melissa Smith presented. I'm sorry, was there a question, Representative? Oh.
I put my hand down because it seemed like you wanted to do your summary first.
Oh,
so
okay.
We can ask later.
Thank you. Victim witness, Director Melissa Smith presented the budget request. Director is presently paid by the hour, and this will move the director to a salaried position. The commissioners are in agreement with her request. There was also a question here on telephone reimbursement, and as I mentioned earlier, Attorney Gordon will look into this issue. The move from hourly to a salaried position has to do with federal regulations, I would say, and state regulations, and that it made more sense that she was in a salary position as opposed to possible some unpaid overtime and so forth. So the move appears to be the correct move. Medical referee, again, was presented by Attorney Gordon. Funding request is at the same level as the past years. Commissioners are in agreement, and Attorney Gordon had mentioned to us that a lot of this is dictated by the number of untimely deaths that occur in our county, and she's not able to completely figure how many deaths will be coming forward. So, in the past, this has we haven't had delegation members so far. So, anyways, this is level funded and in agreement, and the subcommittee was in agreement. 250, we moved to the farm, outside maintenance, water and sewer. Will DeWitt presented the budget request. I believe it's Supervisor DeWitt presented the request. The proposed budget in many of these is equal or level funded to last year's. Commissioners are in agreement to proposed budget. There was much discussion on the farm and the request for a capital expense request for $64,000 wood processor, and the time allotted for outside maintenance, water and sewer operations, how they're designating their time between those very important functions. The committee requested a number of items for further information, and no recommendation was reached at this time for the farm, outside maintenance, water and sewer. And I believe I've talked our recommendations, and meeting adjourned, started at 9:10, adjourned 1:30, 4 hours, 31 minutes later. Another subcommittee meeting is necessary, but that date has not been determined. Summary was provided by myself, retired committee recording secretary. We have had discussion that possibly some of our new members of the delegation that are on the subcommittee will be taking over that onerous position going forward. Thank you.
Well, I didn't get either one of mine to step up to be the recording secretaries.
Delegation.
Yeah, oh well. Okay, we have, you've talked enough for now, and so,
Can we, but I did have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or just maybe a comment. I know that you, and thank you for allowing me to ask the question, Madam Chair, and thank you for all your 4 hours and 31 minutes of honorable work. I do appreciate that. I just, gosh, I hate to admit this, but I guess I've been around for a while, so I want to, try to present some historical knowledge regarding the Child Advocacy Center. And I might start out that I have been a strong advocate of the Child Advocacy Center in the past, and have in fact been the chairman of that committee, subcommittee, a number of times. However, because of that, I do recall last year when they were stating, I believe it was last year, perhaps it was the year before, that when they were talking about adding an office in North Conway, above and beyond the current office that we have, that currently currently serves 52,000 residents of Carroll County, that although we didn't really have the ability to stop them to open this office in North Conway, but it would definitely not add to our funding in the future. Now, of course, I couldn't, guarantee that, but they were of full breadth of knowledge and understanding that when they opened the office in North Conway, that we were not advocating that as our abilities to give them more funding in the future because of it. And I just think that I wanted to impart that upon your recollections, which you may have as well. But
Well, if I could respond, I want to thank the representative, because that was my recall also. The treasurer was here for that center and said that they were going to work diligently. I expressed the same opinion, and they were going to work diligently on finding, and their goal was now, within a year or two, that they could be funded, but it was something that definitely warrants further discussion.
thank you.
So, nursing home.
Well,
Representative Algren.
Well, thank you very much. I have a
And
little
committee?
handout to pass along to everyone, which the new director, Howie Chandler, is here today to help with the questioning, fielding the questions. You can maybe go that way with some, go that way with some, and I'll bring around some. But he provided this. So this handout here is for anyone in the public that might want to take a look at it. Sorry, Representative.
Would you like one?
Starts with A.
Thank you very much. I'm going to attempt to use the same system that Representative McConkey used to just kind of give an overview of our meetings, and then we'll field the questions as they're presented. First of all, our committee has met twice. We met for about 2 hours each time. As true note of my superior leadership qualities, I was able to coerce a new Representative Nelson, to be the recording secretary at our subcommittee meetings. Actually, it was just because of his great volunteerism, and we appreciate that very much. The committee was well attended. And I think we did some good work. Also, as a review, I've had the opportunity, as well as the entire subcommittee, to have interaction with Director Chandler. I find him, quite personally, on a personal note, I find him to be quite competent, and I am very optimistic that he can move forward the great start and the great work by the former director, Sandy McKenzie, who left recently. And I believe how Director Chandler's been now on site for about 6 months. Is that correct? 5 months. So that's about 6 months. So I just want to, just as a note, I handed out this the budget review because I think it's important, as I alluded to earlier, to know how all these numbers did add up to what they add up to. And if you note, you can look at the budget from 2010, that column A, and the budget, that parenthesis numbered, if you don't have the colored, that parenthesis number means the deficit of the difference between the expenses and the revenues. And then the actual differential, which was the profits and loss, so to speak, of $963,000. So the budget was $2.3 million in 2010, and the actual differential was $963,000. And I want to comment to those of you who haven't been around, the 2009 and 8 differential for that actual was around the $1.6 million figure, and that's a testament to the former director McKenzie's efforts to bring those numbers more in line, and that was while she was at the older facility. We've now moved into the facility. We've been in there for a full year, in accordance to the actuals that we'll be looking at in a minute. So then, in 2011, you can also see that we didn't do quite as well, but the number is about the same. But now in the actuals of and the budget is about the same. The budget in 2012 came down to $1.8 million, $500,000 decrease from the year before's budget, which was also put together by the commissioners and former Director McKenzie. But the actuals, as you can see, from 2012 was a deficit of $569,000. Those are not complete, but we feel with a large amount of confidence that $580,000 would be about the worst number that we would see on that line. So as you can see, with that full year in the new facility, they have made some excellent strides forward. Pardon me, I have to turn off my ringer before it gets loud. There we go, I hope. There we go. So then the next line, we had the budget of 2013 showing a $1.5 million deficit, which is another $262,000 less than the deficit in 2012. And that number, that $262,000, is the number that really funnels to the tax rate. So if you look, the expenses have gone up from the budget of 2012 and 2013, but also the projected revenues have also gone up. So when you look at that differential, the amount of deficit has been budgeted at a lesser amount. And that's what the effect on the tax rate is. We've actually reduced the overall impact by that $250,000. We talked about some other things. We're looking at the mission of the nursing home, which is being reworked through the commission. We're looking at the patient census, the patient mix, which is pretty much comprised of what would be considered private pay, which would be if you had no insurance, you're paying out of your pocket solely, or maybe through if you're fortunate enough to have long-term care insurance. Then there's another segment which is termed as skilled, or typically paid by Medicare. And then there's the other segment, which is Medicaid, or what you might consider welfare. So we have skilled, private pay, and Medicaid. Okay, so we're moving in the future. We're hopeful to move forward to have a 10% skilled care at the facility. As some of you may recall, when we designed the new facility, the new community center, I don't know how to really term it, but the Mountain View community, that one neighborhood was designed for skilled care. They had a washing machine installed. That was the hope that would become a skilled care area, which is comprised of about 12 or 13 patients, which is about 10% of the 103 beds. And then we're also looking forward to maintaining the private care of around 25%, and then the remainder care of Medicaid at 65%. That's our goals moving forward for this upcoming budget. So as you can see, overall, the amount of impact to the tax rate, it has been decreased by $250,000. However, having said that, there are some differences that I think are interesting to look at, which we reviewed. As soon as I get to the right page. If you have the sheet that was distributed at our December meeting, the nursing home begins on page 21. It's dated December 6th. It's our most recent, but it does have the adopted budget, the commissioners. The adopted budget is the 2012 budget. That's what that means. And then the commissioners is the proposed 2013 budget. If you look through the first section there, the nursing home administration, that is relatively unchanged. There's no significant number that we saw there. One thing, though, that was brought up during the course of our subcommittee meetings was that the workman's compensation budget has not been adjusted from last year to this year, even in the face of Kathy Gary is here, that's great. And so one of the questions we posed to the administrators there was our inability to understand how the workman's compensation budget lines weren't changing. And we asked them to revisit that to make sure that those numbers were accurate. The next number we have on here is under of interest was under the food line for the home dietary, which is on page 22. What you can see there is it's budgeted for $495,000, which is the same as last year. However, in the face of the rising food, and also in the fact that they are selling food through the cafe part of the cafeteria dietary, that number we felt may be difficult to achieve again. And it was our feeling amongst the subcommittee that we weren't going to increase that number because the director of the dietary department is very motivated to try to meet that number, but there's also an additional $35,000 in cafe revenue that would offset that as part of it. So we asked that the commissioners be somewhat lenient in the future if they're having trouble with that number, to help them find money from other parts of this overall budget. On page 23, under the nursing department, if you look at last year's budget to this year's budget, you will notice that there are increases there. And that is basically because they are asking for one additional person at full-time, one additional full-time person at 2,080 hours. Not one additional person 24 hours a day, one additional person. So that is part and parcel of the increases that you see on that line, which are mostly attributed to the increase in the M&A medication nursing assistant, I believe.
Is that a new authorization, or are they just filling?
They are, that would be new authorized hours.
Thank you.
Above and beyond what they've been authorized in the past, by virtue of the budget compilation.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Representative Ogren, as chairman, on the wages, isn't that also due to the fact of the catch-up for the LNAs?
Right, that is correct. Thank you for that comment. Yes, that is correct. Also, part of it is a proposed $1 increase to the LNA starting salary, and also they'll have to bump up some of the other salaries in order to make all the people at least making that starting salary that are LNAs. That is something that we're taking under advisement. We asked the head of the nursing department, and the department heads did come to our subcommittee, our second subcommittee meeting. We asked them to try to give us comparative analysis with the other two nursing home facilities in the county to help to justify the starting salary situation. So that is part of it, and it certainly is part of our continued interest there. Hopefully we'll see that. We are meeting again directly after this meeting, if we ever complete it. Well, at 12:30. Please, go right ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is this something that is being negotiated through the
Collective bargaining? No.
collective bargaining?
No, this is, the impetus of this increase is the facilities, they feel that their starting salaries are not competitive enough in order to enhance getting new employees and keeping their current employees. They believe the starting salary needs to be increased.
Okay.
And so we are hoping, we asked them to try to give us a competitive analysis, i.e. try to get salary and benefits for starting LNAs at the other competitive facilities within the county. So we're hoping to see a report from that in this afternoon's subcommittee.
I would also like to say that I spoke to the president of the community college, Ross Patel, about the fact that LNAs don't seem to necessarily understand what their work is going to be like once they enter the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And that there seems to be a high turnover of LNAs. And he said, "You're right." And I said, "Okay, wonderful." And his comment was that he really wanted to encourage people to go on to become nurses instead of stopping with the LNA level. So I don't know that, that's not going to affect us today or tomorrow, but I do think it's something that the nursing home needs to keep an eye on. And because that's the place, the community college is where we get the LNAs from, that we need to somehow or other get ourselves wired into what's happening in the LNA education program at the community college that have that particular degree. So I just passed that on because that could have a truly significant effect on what is going to happen in the, probably 6, 8, 10 years down the road, but even so, it is something that we need to keep our eye on. And also to look at our rationale for our nurse to LNA. Whatever. I'm getting old. But our ratio of nurses to LNAs. And I also think that there may be also an opportunity to determine whether or not LNAs are the right people to be filling certain positions. Just kind of a relook at the entire manpower requirements at the nursing home, and that there may be some other options for what happens, unless we can stop the LNA turnover. And if you can do that, then I'm happy, but it may require some additional thought. Yes?
Are we currently having difficulty recruiting LNAs?
That's what I'm told. It's not only recruiting, but it's once they come on, they are not staying.
Right.
I mean, that was the information that I had received. Yes?
I think what the Director of Nursing is trying to indicate by this recommendation for the increase of $1 an hour as a base salary is that the $10 an hour that we're paying as a entrance pay is one of the reasons that there's such a turnover. And that, comparatively speaking, throughout the state, the starting salary for LNAs is several dollars more per hour. And that's why the subcommittee is looking at what other nursing homes in the area are paying as well, so that we can do that comparison. The working conditions at the nursing home are really good, and I think that if we can be a little more competitive, it may help us to retain LNAs. There certainly is always a population that is looking to move up in the professional chain, but also a group that, if taken care of, I think will continue to fill those slots.
And let me just say, I'm not arguing with any of that, okay? I'm just suggesting that we make sure that the mix that we have is appropriate, and that are there other ways to do some of the, what we consider today as traditional LNA work. So that, I'm not arguing, and I don't know what they pay. I don't know what the benefits are at the other places, so. It's a problem. Yes?
Could I ask, who came up with the recommendation for $1? And is that in the budget presently?
The amount of the increase of $1 is budgeted, yes. That is part of this budget, that they will be able to achieve with the increases that were presented in the commissioner's budget.
I believe it's slightly less. It's 60 cents.
For the LNAs?
For the starting age.
For the budget.
Oh, for some reason I have $1 listed. Yeah. But whether it is 60 cents or $1, we will revisit that this afternoon. But it was conveyed that there was no difference, no changes necessary to the commissioner's budget for these changes to take place, that they're already in the budget. And that the overall number of hours increased was the 2,080 hours. The one person full-time was the difference in the number of FTEs.
Commissioner Babson, you had a question?
I was just going to say, Madam Chairman, that I specifically asked the head of nursing at that meeting if it was $1 plus the 40 cents, and she said yes. I don't know where Mr. Chandler at the 60 cents, but you were there. She said it was $1 plus 40 cents.
Okay, we'll sort that out.
We'll sort that out, but that isn't. The subcommittee is in deed in the midst of trying to determine if this is, reasonable or not. Otherwise, within the nursing department, there were no significant changes. Underneath plant operations, the most significant line you will note a difference of on the budget is under medical insurance. One of the increases in the number of FTEs that we were presented to us when we moved to the new facility would be that there'd be 2 full-time additional under plant operations, which was budgeted in last year's budget, so the salary line hasn't really increased. However, they hired those people, and now they have medical insurance. So the lion's share of that differential is because of the 2 new people that are now within that department. Okay, and you'll notice that that difference is $46,000 in total, but to recall that a full-time family cost is $23,000 less than 20%. So of what, that's what the county contributes. So each person can make a difference of $18,000 and change on that line. So that's the explanation. Also, just as a highlight a little further down, you see the electrical expense as far as the budget is concerned, that the electrical expense was reduced by $26,000, but the heating expense was, I circled the wrong line, sorry, this heating expense was reduced by $100,000. And then on the next line, the pellet expense was increased to $80,000, which is showing a $20,000 savings budgeted for heating expense. If you take those 2 numbers, sorry, I circled the wrong number for some reason. So there's net savings there. So that I just wanted to highlight that. And then if you go a little further down to the building repair and maintenance, line number 81, you'll see that that's budgeted from $20,000 has gone up to $40,000. The reason for that is that first year that we had, we didn't have to have maintenance contracts because the utilities and such, they were covered by the first year. Okay, so that's part of the installation. You get first year of maintenance. But now we have to up on these contracts. If you look in 2010, that we spent around that amount of money for maintenance contracts. So this, it's just a re-implementation of what we had the ability to not have to pay because the fact the building was brand new or within 1 year old. So moving on, as far as highlighting goes, we go to housekeeping.
Excuse me. Sure. Did you discuss the fact that the pellet stove is not hooked up to the laundry water?
Oh yes, thank you very much for that question. We did entertain that question, and the commissioners are in the midst of re-reviewing those contracts because they, or at least some of them, believe that they probably should have, but the installation company believes they shouldn't have hooked up the hot water to the laundry. They did receive an estimate of $38,000 to hook up the hot water to the laundry. And I'm sorry, for those of you who don't know, the laundry is currently and is proposed to be in the nursing home annex. So the hot water to the nursing home itself is generated from the pellet boilers. We're just talking about the hot water for the laundry in the annex. And so the cost estimate that they received was $38,000 to basically pipe in the hot water to the laundry. Which obviously at this juncture doesn't seem to have any benefit over the current propane, I believe it's propane that they're currently heating the water with over there to do the laundry. So in the future, though, there may be a reason to consider hooking up the hot water supply to the pellet boiler, but, certainly not at this time, not for that cost. So if they can somehow get to a resolve with the contract that they were issued, they signed for, if that was supposed to include that or not, that can be hooked up that way. But as far as the savings, the recoup on that investment is just going to be too long for I believe it was 200 gallons of water that they use of hot water for the laundry. It was just a day. It was just not reasonable to spend the $38,000 to change the system. And I also just want to comment that we haven't really decided what we're doing over there with the annex. That's still part of our decision tree here. And what if we decide we want to put the laundry in a different spot? So it doesn't make much sense to hook up and plumb a laundry department where it currently is when it may not end up there, or it may end up with the washers in a different spot. So it may be wise to hold tight at this juncture. Thank you very much again for
Mr.
your
Chairman?
question.
I think if you look back at the minutes of June 27, 2011, I commented to this board that to hook up the pellet furnaces was to heat the old nursing home and the new nursing home. Had nothing to do with the laundry. The reason for that was exactly what you were saying. The laundry was going to be rehabbed and changed around, and that's why it wasn't hooked up at that time. You're right.
If one other
Yes,
thing.
Madam Chair.
I thought that propane costs were down, and we're budgeting basically the same amount as we did in 14, or in 14, whenever it was, 12.
Okay.
And I don't know what the contract for the propane is at this point, but I would just simply ask that you look at it on page 26.
Okay.
Okay, 26.
Oh, page 26. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I mean,
Thank you.
it may not, we may be locked into a 5-year contract for propane delivery or something, but I don't know that. Okay.
Sorry, okay. So moving on to housekeeping. There is a request for an additional 32 hours per week in FTEs. Since we're all apprised of what that means, or we feel better about what it means, which is for the week, 32 hours. Basically, it's 4 8-hour shifts per week they wish to add to the housekeeping department, which is included in that budget increase.
And so with 32 hours, does that make that person full-time and therefore eligible for?
Thank you very much for that question. Great minds think alike. We actually did entertain that question to the directors and the department heads there, that it certainly would make a lot more sense if we filled those hours with either existing employees, then kept them at part-time, or hired an additional part-time person, so we could avoid additional benefit expenses, which were somewhat highlighted earlier with the plant operations differential, as far as adding another insurance, family insurance is, we're talking about $18,000. So so there's a request for those 32 additional hours a week. We also had a discussion under the consultants, which is on the next page under physician and pharmacy, is essentially that consultant line, is my understanding. Part of that line is for basically putting these physicians on retainer so they will come. And then in addition to that, they also bill Medicare for these services. And so about $22,000 of that line is this retainers fees for the dentist and the psychiatrist, as I recall, to come in. And I believe it was $14,000 for the psychiatrist and $8,000 for the dentist. We've asked, and also Commissioner Baskin, it was really his impetus to ask if we might be able to find out if we might be able to find someone else who would be willing to come in for a little less money on those particular items. Yes, Commissioner Baskin.
Don't forget the Huggins Hospital also has a retainer fee, we just didn't know how much it was at the time. So it's the psychiatrist, the mobile dental, and Huggins. They all do the same thing. Different amounts.
Okay.
Substantial.
So moving along to the physical therapy department, you will see actually that that overall total for that department was decreased, and that is largely attributable to the line 40, where the skilled has been reduced from $80,000 to $60,000. And we queried them on this, since we were supposedly going to be increasing our skilled care. Why are we reducing the budget for that? And essentially, what is happening is that even though that's reduced, that is not implying that those numbers might not change. Okay, that it is possible that we will spend more, but the budgeted amount is not reflective of necessarily maybe the patient mix adjustment. And you'll see that a little later on, how that came into play. But it's also just kind of just a notification to the commissioners and all involved that if that line is overspent in lieu of other lines being underspent, that is why in the actuals. So the next, under recreational therapy, they have an additional ask for 48 hours of FTEs per week under the salaries, and that is due to, or at least that was reported to us that was because that job category works until 7 at night and not until 4. Or that the activities shouldn't stop at 4, that, after supper they need to be able to do things, and there needs to be a coordination of that. And so that this 48 hours was to be able to enhance that. So moving on to social services, that's relatively unchanged. Pretty much the rest of it was relatively unchanged. I just wanted to try to point out, perhaps, the speech therapy. Yeah, if you look on page 29, on page 29, if you look at that, see the adopted budget was for $100,000 for the speech therapy Part B, the special services. This is money we would pay to, essentially as a commission, to outside contractors that come in to do that. That you see we budgeted for $100,000, but we actually spent $165,000 on that line last year. And I say, the good news is that if you look over at the revenue, I can find my revenue page. If you look over at the revenue page, that won't be helpful. That the revenue, unfortunately, we don't have that from the actuals, but the revenues from that increased, offsetting that amount of money. In my recollections, I don't have a notation there, was that increase of the $65,000, netted us about double that in revenues.
$290
in revenue. So just because the budget does not necessarily directly reflect, hopefully, the mission going forward with a full year, that that the director and the department heads are still on board with being able to achieve that same sort of idea, and that the amount of money will shift because it's a commission. Remember I said we pay like a commission to those special services? We don't have to hire a person. We just pay a commission to an outside agency to do that for us. So the overall reflection will not be like an apples to apples thing where we need to hire people in order to do more. Those people are actually employed by outside companies that come in and do it. So, as I mentioned earlier, as far as the totals were concerned, that, we do have a budgeted increase of the 262 as far as, 262 is not the budget increase, the $262,000 is the reflection on the decrease in the tax rate, and that, it is our hope that with these changes that we could perhaps bring this deficit down, another $200,000 to maybe $300,000 in the next time we come to meet for next year. That's kind of the goal as far as our reductions in the deficit. And that pretty much concludes my presentation. I did say at the beginning to hold your questions, although that got kind of changed around, so we might have missed some questions because you were holding, before we started asking questions. So, Representative Bucco?
Just the last thing that you were just talking about. In here you have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. They all have two categories of skilled and Part B. Can you? How does that work?
Is that in the? I'm sorry. Are you looking at the expenses or the revenues?
Well, I'm looking at revenues, but it's the same in both in expenses also.
Private insurance versus Part B.
I have the answer.
Yes.
The Part A is when someone comes to us directly from the hospital, and that's called skilled care. The Part B is for somebody who is already a resident, but needs specialized short-term treatments. So Part A is going to be typically the much larger amount, while Part B is going to be for the people that are requiring subsequent treatment.
That's basically your Medicare split.
Yeah. Thank you.
I do have one question, and that is, it appears that our budgeted deficit is at least twice as much as our actual. And this has gone on, year after year after year. And I'm just not sure why we budget such a large deficit when in fact historically we haven't done that. We haven't run that kind of a deficit because, as you said, the tax rate is based on the projected deficit. And then I assume at the end of the year, if they don't need that, then that money stays in the pot to reduce taxes the following year. But I am where my concern is that we're budgeting a deficit that historically we have not come close to meeting. So I'm not asking for any solutions now. I just want you to think about it in your subcommittee and, come back with some sort of something. Yes, go ahead.
If I might. And thank you very much, and if I might respond. I think and my answer to that would be that statutorily, for the commissioners, they are held by statute to not expend more money than we have allowed. However, there is no statutory binding about revenues. So when we set revenues, they are not bound to achieve the revenues. And and historically, we've seen what happens when you overestimate revenues. So what's basically happening is that if you look at the budget of 2012 being the expenses being $11,761,000, and then you look at the actual expenses being $11,512,000, you can see that the actual expenditure versus what was budgeted is very close. Where we see the differential is when you look down at the revenues. The revenues were estimated at 9.9 million, and the actuals were 10.9 million. So so in short, the answer to your question would be, the remedy would be to enhance our revenues. And we have the ability to do that, and we could probably do that with some bit of comfort. The question is, at what risk do we want to do that, and what liability do we really hold out the taxpayers to if those revenues are not achieved? Because once again, statutorily, we have no recourse as far as if we don't achieve revenues, what happens. So in short, that would be my quick answer to that remedy, would be that we could take a look at revenues and think about the possibility of enhancing them. But unfortunately, some of those revenues are at risk as to what what's set as the rates is from Medicaid. Those are revised every 6 months. And so there is some risk in how much we will receive in bed tax money. And so those estimates, we've just tried to be conservative.
So we're placing the risk on the taxpayer, is what we're doing by this. So okay. All right, thank you. We have one last report, and that's on the jail, and I understood that Representative McConkey was going to speak for Representative Schmidt, or do we want to, are you prepared to say something?
If I could, Madam Chairman, Representative Schmidt did not have time to compile where his notes were at this time, so I prefer to allow him to elaborate.
Okay.
We're not in agreement with the budget, we're not in agreement with the budget this time. We've asked for several follow-up more information, and another meeting is being scheduled.
Okay. So I think that covers everybody and all of the departments. We have next on our agenda, how about if everybody stands up for 5 minutes? Stretch your legs.
Great, that sounds great.
Yeah, you can do what you want in this 5 minutes, but everybody back. Tyson is going to send me a proposal or a thought process about, or realize that we as a delegation could do a performance audit, and sent me some thoughts and has done some work on performance, looking at what goes into it. We also talked about it at my general, everything else subcommittee meeting with the commissioners. But I would like to ask Representative Ticehurst if she would kind of go through what that's all about. I understand that both Coos County and Grafton County have completed performance audits. I was told that Coos County's was final, but you look at Coos County and it still shows preliminary on the computer. So if you would,
Okay,
please.
thank you. This is just a thought process. I'm not all the way there on it yet. I'm not one side or the other yet, but in some of the orientation materials we got, there was a list of the RSAs outlining our responsibilities. And I think the last one said that we had the authority to direct that there be a performance audit of any department and authorized to spend funds on that. And my first thought was that it would be probably a really good idea to look and see how we're performing and see if there are ways we could be more efficient and more effective. But I didn't really want to propose to spend a whole lot of money, not knowing how much it would cost. So my original thought was it would be great to do one department each year or whatever. And then I checked to see, and I don't believe we've done them here before. And then I looked to see what other counties had done and looked into it, and the costs were anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 approximately, which sounded like a lot of money. So I read the Grafton. I think the COAS one may be still in dispute about whether that's complete. So I believe it was the Grafton one that I looked at. And it was interesting. Most of the recommendations seemed to center around how the different departments work together. So that meant my original thought of doing one at a time probably wasn't the best way to go about it, that you probably would need to look at your whole system and how your whole system works. And my next thought was to ask some of the department heads about how they work together, and I don't believe we have anything in place right now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, we don't have anything in place right now for department heads to meet together and to share what's working for them and what their challenges are and what needs they have in common that they might coordinate with. So at this stage, my personal thinking is that if we can facilitate something like that right away and then hear from them and the commissioners' suggestions of how we might work together with the thought of planning for a performance audit in another year or so, that might be a good way to go about it.
Okay. I know that in the stuff that you were passed out, this is the RSA that governs the performance audit. And I certainly know that you all spent hours studying this. But if for some reason or other you have forgotten what it is, it's chapter 2426, RSA 2426, dealing with performance audits. And I liked it so much, I have 2 copies. So, has anyone else thought about this or had any comments or things that they might want to add? Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't care. Somebody.
I haven't thought about this recently. We had looked into it in the past, and we came up against the $40,000 cost. But this is a new step here to have the department heads maybe meet regularly and with the commissioners and talk about how the day-to-day operations are going. That might be useful.
Yes.
I'm sorry. No, I think Chris was first. Well, the idea of department heads, do your department heads ever have a meeting together with you as the commissioners to oversee what's going on in each department, like together, or do you do it individually?
Not all department heads. If you take the jail and the farm, they talk to each other and work things out.
Right.
The county attorney might meet with department heads, but we don't meet all together.
Well, I know in our town, when I was a selectman in Moulton Borough, we started, our administrator started a process which I thought was very handy and very helpful, that they have meetings on Fridays. They do it every Friday. I'm not suggesting that the department heads meet with the commissioners every Friday, but they do meet every Friday morning at 9 o'clock to go over things in what's going on in the town, and the department heads actually have a chance to talk to each other. And the meetings that I sat in on, I found a lot of interaction between the departments and a lot of suggestions brought back and forth. And then I found that they started working together to actually do some cost-effective procedures that really, like recreation, working with the nursing department on certain activities, and I just thought it was very helpful. I don't know how it would be with the county, because I realize, you know, there's a lot going on here, but it really was a helpful thing for the department heads.
Representative Dahlgren, did you want to speak next, or did you want to vote your piece?
I was just waiting for other folks to get a chance to speak before I did.
Representative Merrill.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chair, the question I have, I think audits are good, I'm not against them at all. But before I audit something, I'd like to know what exactly I'm supposed to audit. And just to have a meeting with the people to get together and see how they get together and so forth, it's fine. But usually an audit is some form of a measurement. And I think before you really need to get down and make these measurements, you need to know what you're measuring. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't.
Representative Vogel.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I've thought about the performance audits before, as Representative Bucco alluded to. You know, from where I sit, for as long as I've sat, what I found is that I feel like, you know, during the budget time, you know, we really only hear from the department heads, and we don't really get much independent resource from what we should be doing budget-wise. And I must agree that I felt like that our ability, which we are statutorily allowed to have a performance audit, would be helpful. It would give us some independent eyes on something that we're looking for, but it would be something that we would specifically task them to do. You know, it would be very precise in what we're interested in. You know, let's look at the jail, for instance, as an example. We would identify, perhaps during the course of time, what seems to be growing at a rate that's maybe a little faster than the others, and you know, and hire them and task them specifically with the idea of what we were looking for, or questions that we had. Do we really need, how many people do we really need? Do we need cameras? I'm just using the jail as an example, just for, and for them to report to us, because many times when we get these free consultations, it seems like the free consultations are always end up with the great ideas on how to spend more money and how to become, you know, maybe not as beneficial to the taxpayer. Whereas if we directed a consultant to find us a way to become more efficient in the jail, you know, whatever department, and that was their task, and we gave them a few bullets on what we thought they should be looking into, that we actually might get a report back from them that says, yeah, you know, maybe your camera system's great, but it's the wrong one, and this would be better in the long run. You know, you should be able to get, you know, have less people there, whatever it takes. I don't know, whatever their recommendations might be, and you know, but so that would be what I would like to see, and maybe do it on a rotating basis. I think that the commissioners, it would be a great idea for them to let their department heads to interact with one another, but you know, just kind of knocking them out one by one over time might be helpful.
Representative McConkey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm glad to see Representative Ticehurst revive this conversation we've had before. It's timely and it makes sense. Taxpayers are being asked time and time again to subsidize with their taxes more and more of our increase that many times are uncontrollable year to year, but we're taking more out of their pockets. I think that looking for savings and efficiencies and what we've seen happen in some of our other fellow counties, I think makes nothing but sense. And I think to delay that any further, we'd be negligent in doing that. So I'm going to suggest that we form a task force or a subcommittee that explores who is out there to perform these services, who's been used in the past, what the cost is, how far out we are to having such a study performed. And I would like to see that we take care of that during this budget cycle. And I'd be happy to serve on that, but I think it certainly it requires our time and effort to take care of that now.
If I could,
please.
Representative Ticehurst, would you respond to Representative McConkey's question about who's out there to accomplish these studies?
I would if I could remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the firm that did it, but.
As I understood from your emails that you sent me, that there's basically one firm that accomplishes this for the counties, and that they have a excellent reputation, not only in doing the things that they're doing in the performance audits, but also in other auditing work that occurs. So I'm not real sure that we need to form a subcommittee to figure out who's out there. I think basically that work has been accomplished. But that's...
A piece.
Yeah, it's a piece.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of your explanation and discussion on the performance audit. But isn't it true that a performance audit isn't simply to look at where efficiencies can be created, but that a performance audit may in fact say we're deficient in a certain area and we may want to spend more money in a certain area? It's not simply to look at where we can cut, but look at what the overall success or lack thereof of a particular department is.
Right, it's kind of the whole thing. Go ahead.
Thank you for your question or comment, and I am, and I want to make it clear that it's not a witch hunt. I want to make sure that gets down to the departments. It's not, looking to see who's wasting money or not producing or who can be cut, that kind of thing. It is just to see how well we're doing and how we could work together better. And if we see that we're doing really well, that's going to be a great boost for our morale and a lot easier to go to taxpayers and say why the money that they're spending is well spent. And my personal feeling, why I got excited about the idea in the first place, although I'm a little more measured and slow now, but the first excitement was that we could find some synergy. We could find some ways where the same amount of money, the same amount of time, we're working together, we can accomplish something that we can't accomplish piece by piece by piece.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Yes.
Just a quick comment. I normally don't often agree with Representative Algren, but in this particular case I do. We had 2 free audits of the jail. One came in recommending that we increase the number of correctional officers. The other one came in, we don't have a perimeter fence. So both those audits required costing us more money should we follow their recommendation.
I guess that if no one objects, okay, I would like to ask Representative Ticehurst if she would head up a subcommittee to look at this. And what I would, from my perspective, I'm not sure personally that waiting a year or 2 years, or that there's ever going to be a right time for an expense. That I would ask that you come back with some sort of recommendation prior to the finalization of the budget, which, my goal is not to do it on the 31st of March, when it's due in DRA, but to shoot for someplace around the middle of March. So I guess that what I would say is that if we could get a little bit more definitive things, okay, by the 1st of March, and we can do that through submission of the information to the county here, and then the county can distribute it to us, because if we contact everyone by email, could be violating the right to know, and it's not a violation as long as at the next delegation meeting, you bring it in and you present it as part of the minutes. But I'd much rather have it go through the county and out to us.
So you would want the subcommittee to submit a report to the commissioners?
No.
No.
Just,
To who?
it comes back to us, but it goes through the office here.
To the,
Through, well,
secretary?
Kathy. Yeah.
Kathy Geary.
Okay.
Okay, and then, Kathy can distribute it to the people. But I am, I don't know if any of you read my propaganda when I was running, for representative, and my thoughts on the county. But my thought on the county is that it may be time for us to bite the bullet and hire an administrator. But then as I got to thinking about it, maybe I should back off on that particular thing and have the performance audit done initially to see where and what and how we could increase, maybe the wrong term is efficiency, but make sure that the cooperation, and make sure that the commissioners themselves aren't working 80 hours a week or 40 hours a week, because that's not
That's not what we're paid for, right?
Yes.
I don't think they are, so we're okay there.
Well, I'm not going to get into one way or the other on that, but, that's not their job. Their job is whatever. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So I do know that Representative Cordelli has told me that he would be more than happy to serve on this little subcommittee. And he was not able to be here today, but I do want you to know that he's here. And Representative McConkey has indicated that he would like to serve on that. And is there anyone else that... Lavender, Tom. Representative Lavender would also like to serve on that. So that's 4, is that correct? And those notices will be, the meeting time will be posted, and so that if there's anyone else that wants to...
I'd like to be on, if that's possible.
Sure.
I don't know if you want to even...
No, doesn't matter to me. Representative Holmgren.
Also.
Okay, so we'll do that. Before we go into convention, in speaking to Kathy and the commissioners for our next meeting, they have indicated that the amount spent, the expenditures for 2012 would not be finalized until the week of the 11th. The following week is President's Day, the 18th. And that brings us to the 25th.
Which is legislative break.
No, we're not having
No
legislative break.
legislative break.
Oh, okay, no legislative break this year. So, my question is this, all right? Do we want to think about meeting on like Friday the 15th or Friday the 22nd or Monday the 18th or Monday the 25th? I know that historically our meetings have always been on Mondays, but with President's Day and school vacation week starting on the following Monday. I don't know who that affects. I don't, you know, that,
Might affect me.
you know, that, yes.
Can I just add to the, like with the subcommittees meeting and getting new numbers together, would I have the new numbers to put them in a column, a separate column, so that you could be looking at everything at once?
Yes.
Just as a thought.
Yes. That would,
And I would get the numbers from the subcommittee.
from the
chair.
subcommittee chairman. So,
Madam Chair,
yes,
I would appreciate it if we could meet on a Friday, simply because those holiday Mondays are going to be hard for me.
I understand that. Just a minute. Anybody, is anyone opposed? Will the subcommittees be able to finish the majority of their work by the 15th or the 22nd?
That'd be fine.
So would the, from your perspective?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Is the 15th okay with you, Kathy?
Well, it's fine if everybody has their numbers
Okay,
before, like by the 14th at least, or,
okay.
you know, the subcommittee. I don't know
Yeah.
what their subcommittee schedules are yet. How much more work?
Well, maybe we should make it the 22nd.
I think so.
And that will give, well, I mean, speak up.
The 22nd's better.
Okay. So we will meet on the 22nd at 9 o'clock.
President's Day. February 27th.
Yeah,
Yes.
What day is that?
Friday.
Thank you.
okay. So,
9 o'clock.
Subcommittee chairman, your responsibility is to get the information to Kathy by at least the 20th. So it gives her a day to make the inputs and the adjustments and all of the things that need to occur. And hopefully everybody will have their stuff solved. But again, if you don't, all right, that's not, you know, outside the realm of possibility. But if we look at our March calendar, the last day, the 18th, is when I really want to try to wrap up the budget, 18th of March, or April, March. So that gives Kathy a little bit of time to do what she needs to do. We have time to do what we need to do, and we don't have to meet in Concord. Okay? All right, now, can I have a motion to go into convention?
Move to go into a convention.
Second?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. Oh, shucks. I forgot to do the minutes. Okay. Would, Rochelle, would you please read the motion that we need to pass back, the one that we had on the subcommittee for the sheriff?
At the beginning?
Yep. It was to form a subcommittee to talk about, to discuss Wolfboro, Moultonboro, and Conway with a report back by the 30th of May. Okay, that's,
To make a report by May 30th.
Right.
And it was seconded by Rep. Crawford.
okay. So, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second? Representative Merrill? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Can we please come out of convention?
So moved.
All right, thank you. And obviously, I am not doing well because I forgot the minutes. Okay.
So retracted?
No, we have to,
Come out and go back.
yeah, come out, go out, yes.
Move to go into convention.
No, you gotta approve the minutes first.
Okay.
accept the minutes
Right.
of
December 12th?
December 12th.
No, when was our meeting? Oh, December 12th, yep.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, I know you've all gotten them and read them. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now,
Move to go into convention?
do I have a sec?
Second.
Okay, Ed Representative Butler seconds. Okay, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Madam Chairman, before you go out of convention, do we need to also bring in the subcommittee for the performance audit? Or does that need to be done?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we can,
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
we can just do that.
Move to come out of convention.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We have public, any other business?
Yes, Rep. Cordelli asked to be on the IT committee. I think that was the last on the
Pardon?
subcommittee. Rep. Cordelli volunteered to be on the IT committee.
Yes, he did. I should mention that. This is the IT committee that the complex has set up, and he wanted to participate in that. So, public comments.
Thank you very much, Representative. I just wanted to ask a little bit about the dial-a-ride, the recommendations respecting that. You said you had proposed, Representative McConkey, to cut the $2,000 request to $1,000. Obviously, that's almost rounding error in the budget, but it's a microcosmic way of looking at what I was saying earlier. I revere New Hampshire's practice, governing practice of being frugal, and it's a bipartisan practice that's been followed for many years by both parties, and I wish it were followed by both parties in Washington, instead of neither party in Washington. But what is the animating thinking here? What is the philosophy that says, well, this is worth $1,000 but not $2,000? What public good is being provided here? And I grant you that public transportation is often a public good that private markets can't serve because of market failure. But in Carroll County, New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire, is this, in fact, a necessary public good? What yardstick will be used by the commissioners, by the representatives in deciding that taxpayer money should be allocated for this purpose and not for some other purpose? And by following that analysis, by making that effort, it seems to me, instead of simply blanket frugality, you then start satisfying what I think is Representative Butler's very legitimate observation that governing isn't simply frugality. That is not a governing philosophy. Governing is choosing. And you may well have to increase spending on certain functions. I happen to think that a number of government functions in New Hampshire at all levels are underfunded. But you can't do that without first deciding what functions are proper to government, and why is the dial-a-ride not a good opportunity to come up with a yardstick that each of you can apply across the board each time a new proposal for spending comes up. So I'd love to hear from Representative McConkey or anyone else what the philosophy is that would support spending $1,000 on dial-a-ride.
Thank you. I would ask that Representative McConkey not respond right now, but rather talk to his subcommittee and provide something at our next meeting, which will be on the 22nd of February. And I think that the points that Mr. Thompson raised make sense for all things, no matter what it is. And I'm not pros and cons, or, we don't need to get into that debate here.
Well, thank you. I've never heard that said of anything I've said, so I appreciate that.
Are there any other business to come before our meeting? Yes?
Just ask the people of the Performance Audit Subcommittee to meet with me after the meeting so we can pick our meeting date.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there anyone that wants to continue sitting here? All right, unanimous. Thank you.